Wendy Williams, the undisputed queen of controversial subjects whom they sought to censor, has now testified in a federal court, a development that caught everyone by surprise. Wendy has now spoken up after decades of speculation, distrust, and unrelenting criticism from within the profession. Her story is about more than simply Diddy. It's about the culture of hip-hop and the abuse that goes hand in hand with it. Starting with Jay-Z and ending with R. Kelly, Wendy had dates, quotations, and terrifying memories, including radio blackballing and non-disclosure agreements. This was no gossip piece. It was a bombshell deposition given while under oath, and everyone was paying attention. She had the power to bring down a whole industry with her comments against Diddy, Jay-Z, and their twisted relationship. Fasten your seatbelts, because Wendy Williams has just transformed the courtroom into her purple paradise. Wendy Williams's entrance into the courtroom was more akin to that of a person who had been buried alive and who had battled her way out in order to finally speak the truth than that of a superstar. She had no interest in making headlines or causing trouble. The media had been trying to quiet her for years via litigation, threats, blackballing, and ridicule. Now, a federal probe included all of her warnings and the misinformation she had spread on her previous radio program. That was why she was here. She took a seat, fixed her gaze squarely on the jury, and slowly but surely adjusted her microphone. I was untidy all the time. A resentment never touched me. I always told the truth. I was just a little bit late, Wendy explained, quickly reiterating her purpose in court: to give an oath of testimony on the threats, cover-ups, routines, and behaviors that she had long accused Sean "Diddy" Combs of organizing. She told the court, "When I first started talking about Diddy, I wasn't trying to tear him down. I was trying to wake people up." As she stood before the judge, she produced a stack of documents, including transcripts of her previous shows, emails from executives, and a chronology of Diddy's alleged attempts to silence her. She began in the year 2000. They looked out for him. It was common knowledge. Moments where station management cautioned her, advertisers withdrew out of her program, and subtle but obvious threats were described. You couldn't talk about Puff without a phone call coming in an hour later. "You're taking on too much, Wendy," they would whisper. "You're going to get hurt, Wendy," she said as she recounted the incident of a girl group supposedly dispatched by Diddy himself, chasing her out of her radio station. "In the end, I said they were bankrupt, and they were at my building within hours. That's deliberate planning, not luck." Like a combat zone, Wendy portrayed her career. Someone in my life would disappear, like a sponsor, a syndication contract, or a network invitation, if I uncovered anything about Diddy, whether it was his parties or his treatment of his artists. However, I was unyielding. Despite your threats and blacklisting efforts, you will never be able to delete me. I hope they're paying attention because I'm swearing to keep going until the truth gets out loud enough to deactivate their machine. Wendy shifted her focus from Diddy to Jay-Z, another artist she had long warned the public about, in response to the prosecution's question regarding the society around Diddy. Her voice tightened. The folks who stood at Diddy's side and grinned while the abuse occurred are an integral part of any discussion of his actions. Wendy glanced over the jury and then leaned in, her gaze fixed on Jay-Z. "Do any of you recall Foxy Brown? At 15 years old, she stood tall. She retrieved song lyrics from Foxy's debut album, lyrics that Jay-Z allegedly composed, and shared them with Jay-Z, who was 27 years old. And they were always together. The numb I got is the best of its kind. Indulge me like no one else." With purpose, she read loudly. The audience flinched. She went on to say, "You tell me why was an adult penning those lyrics for a kid?" Gossip about Jay allegedly picking Foxy up from high school, expensive presents, shopping sprees, and hair appointments paid for by a man nearly twice her age were among the facts she shared, things that only an insider in the industry would know. This was more of a grooming session than a label signing. Soon after, Wendy leaked an even more sinister item, a supposed recording. For a long time, rumors circulated that Jay-Z, Foxy, and Jamie Foxx were on a tape. It remained a mystery to you thereafter. Why? The burglary at Foxy's house happened out of nowhere, and the video was missing. How about a coincidence? It was not long after Wendy suggested that Jay-Z's interactions with young females warranted an investigation that her highly rated radio show was terminated. They said I was toxic, but you're starting to see that my questions were valid. After then, the prosecution wanted to know if she had any hard proof, emails, phone records, and the producers who pulled out of her program when she mentioned Jay. All of this Wendy agreed to. She informed the court that Jay-Z's entourage discreetly contacted people in the entertainment sector in order to smear anyone who mentioned Foxy. She explained, "They made me the villain because I asked the question that any decent person would have asked." After that, she addressed the jurors. "If I was untidy, I would have lost sponsors, right?" "No, because I was correct, my sponsors cut ties with me." Wendy then proceeded to what she referred to as the part nobody wanted to believe, the section that led to her being accused of being dishonest, overbearing, and other derogatory terms. "I was the first to say it. Those weren't parties, they were operations," she said, the court, bringing up the notorious freakoffs, a word that is now at the heart of the federal accusation against Diddy. Wendy mentioned that rumors of these activities began circulating in the late 1990s during Bad Boy's heyday, guests signing non-disclosure agreements, being escorted by candlelight, being monitored by cameras, and being allocated rooms. This was more of a ceremony than a house party. She brought up the fact that Karen Superhead Stevens had informed Wendy on Live that Diddy had requested her to attend one of these parties and demanded that guys be included. Superhead was very forthright, Wendy said. She went into detail about Diddy's drug usage, paranoia, and bizarre setups. He was worried that Wendy might reveal his secret. Wendy pushed in closer once again. "I ensured that the interview was heard. The weight of the truth was too great to bear, so I played it again and over." Other visitors, both male and female, who had attended Diddy's parties and returned traumatized, shared similar tales, which she recounted. They weren't just told to party, they were instructed what to wear, who to touch, and where to go, Wendy said. She had spoken with 3 people who had mentioned the usage of IV bags to recuperate from the party, an account that is now included in the court indictment. They mentioned that medical assistants were prepared and ready to go. We are talking about organized wickedness here, not socializing. People who had confided in her had their identities concealed as she compiled a collection of their testimony. As each incident mirrored the exact patterns recounted by Cassie Ventura, Gan Deal, and other case witnesses, the court was taken aback. "The baby oil. I said it on air as a joke, but it wasn't funny," Wendy finally stated, and everyone took a heavy hit. True to my word, they did in fact find more than 1,000 bottles. How did I know? Reason being, I was the only one prepared to admit it. She leaned back in her chair, regained her composure, and turned to Diddy. "Finally, after all these years, we have arrived. This is now proof, not rumor." Wendy Williams turned her attention to Cassie Ventura, another client she had been fighting for years, as the courtroom fell into a hushed silence. "I said it back then," she asserted, her gaze fixed on the jurors the whole time. "The glitter, the music videos, and the red carpets captivated you all, but all I saw was a terrified girl. I went on the air and pointed out the disparity." Wendy claimed that she had attempted to alert her audience as early as 2008 on the allegations of compulsive control that Diddy reportedly possessed over Cassie, and that something seemed strange about their relationship. He was in his early 40s, while she was 19. Cassie was almost unable to escape the mogul's lifestyle due to his planes, private security, and business power, which she described as leverage rather than love. She required a bodyguard, not a partner, as I stated before and will repeat now. In front of the jury, she presented an old tape from her program in which Cassie shivered when Diddy became angry and glanced down during an interview. People said it was anxiety, but I thought it was trauma. The prosecution used a chronology of Wendy's broadcasts that corresponded with Cassie's legal assertions as proof, but no one paid attention. I was informed that Diddy could access her phones, that he would unexpectedly visit hotels, and that he would have people unlock her doors. She stopped before speaking out loud. Her show's sponsors then terminated her. Wendy then brought up an event that happened in 2018, the one in which Cassie supposedly broke the relationship following Diddy's purported invasion of her house. Before that, he had also shown up uninvited, Wendy stated. A mogul wants power and doesn't require anyone's permission, which is something many people don't get. The universe seems to reshape itself just for them. She chillingly detailed for the court the processes at work in moguldom, including grooming, isolation, business influence, and the use of the illusion of riches to compel compliance. Instead of loving Cassie, he treated her like property. Finally, Wendy concluded her testimony by stating, "Everything in that lawsuit, I saw the sign." This section dealt with her risky behavior after she broke the chain. At last, she is getting some attention since I mentioned it in public. But how much will it truly cost? Wendy repositioned her microphone. This time her voice slowed down rather than quivered. "You can't just bring up men like Diddy and expect to avoid consequences." Even though I was aware of it, I had no idea how profound it would be until it really occurred. Wendy continued talking about Puff, even after receiving a message from a record company executive telling her to stop talking about Puff or else, in 2004, when she was at the height of her radio supremacy, according to her testimony. The very following week, her afternoon shift was cancelled. "They didn't even try to make it seem like it wasn't about him," she added. "That was my punishment." Wendy came clean about the fact that she had heard rumors circulating that Diddy had warned label executives, promoters, and radio networks to keep their distance from her through strategic phone conversations. After she branded the girl group total washed up and broke on Live, she recounted an incident where a program director told her directly, "You went too far, you poked the wrong bear." She went on to discuss the near attack she had in front of her studio. "Do you honestly believe they just appeared out of nowhere?" "No. Someone sent them." Wendy described the scene with great clarity, including the frantic intern, the crush of fans on the glass of the radio station foyer, and her then-boyfriend waiting in a car. She continued by saying, "That wasn't just a confrontation. That was a message." She went on to detail the ways in which she had been cut off from BET events, refused media access, and lost advertising partnerships. Everything was planned out. Diddy wanted to do more than halt me, he wanted to eliminate me. Public relations agencies that had been working with Bad Boy at the time individually produced printed emails in which they distanced themselves from her agenda. "We will no longer be booking talent on Wendy Williams' show," one email said, per client instruction. "That client?" was the question asked. "Wendy raised the page," she said. Returning her attention to the jury, she said, "Sean Combs." She went on to say, "I wasn't the first to be blackballed, but she was one of the few who were vocal about it. If you dare to speak, he will take it all away from you. Your microphone, your cash, and your reputation." Despite the awkward pause, I persisted in speaking, so here I am. After a little period of silence, Wendy began to describe an event that, looking back, seemed almost strange. "We hail from a historically homophobic period of hip-hop," she started, paraphrasing her own statements from the past. "That was the truth, not shade. And for saying it, I was burned at the stake." She went on to explain how, in the early 2000s, there was an unseen but still apparent attempt to shield certain celebrities from criticism by publicly humiliating their detractors. "When I was on the radio with Charlemagne, we both knew exactly what to say and what to leave out in order to maintain our jobs. Yet I still said it." She drew attention to her 2004 book, The Wendy Williams Experience, which had subtle allusions and cautions regarding Jay-Z, Diddy, and their illicit lives. What was once considered gossip is now referred to as evidence by the government. Next, Wendy reminisced about an interview she had with Mark Curry, a former bad boy singer and the man behind the song Dancing with the Devil in 2009. "I agreed," she said, and suddenly that interview disappeared from the radio station's archives. She informed the court that she had encountered resistance whenever she attempted to feature industry critics like Superhead, Gene Deal, or Jaguar Wright, including emails, threats, and even complaints from the FCC. "Every possible angle was used in their attempt to silence me. There was a list, not written down, but everyone in the industry knew it. A list of people you couldn't talk about," she said, capturing the focus of the court's attention. She went on to say, "And when I broke that rule, I paid." She detailed how her Hot Topics segments were under continual review, how talent representatives intimidated the show's producers, and how management told her to tone it down. "I was planning to embarrass myself and the station, but now that the truth is out, it's all messed up anyway," she said after pausing. After Wendy concluded this portion, her voice became quieter. "A cover-up has ended, and this trial is only the last chapter in it. I also want the jury to know that I've been warning them about this for the past 20 years. It has only barely reached your ears." Her tone changed once again, becoming crisper and more precise, as Wendy turned her gaze back to the courtroom. "You honestly believe that I'm limiting this to only Diddy? You're wrong," she said, making direct eye contact with jury members. "This is about the ecosystem that protected him, and that includes names you were never supposed to hear in a courtroom: Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey." And with that, the entire courtroom became silent. She provided a frank and concise explanation in response to the prosecution's request. "Hollywood has a list, not one you'll ever lay eyes on or touch, but it's genuine. You should not cross these folks." Wendy recalled the events after her notorious radio segments, in which she revealed Tyler Perry's alleged blackballing of her behind closed doors, in addition to Diddy's parties and manipulation. "Wendy, your name is being passed around," my sources informed me directly. These sources included actual producers and agents. "Certain subjects are off-limits. You're being accused of being unstable," she said, going on to explain that her access to the business was severely limited following her split with the Precious Crew, on which Oprah and Perry had significant roles. "My name changed from being on the guest list for premieres to being completely removed. I was informed by an executive that Oprah's team no longer wants you in the vicinity of her." Power like that was utilized to shield individuals like Diddy. Next, a disturbing anecdote. Wendy said in her testimony that she had confided in Oprah privately once regarding her personal abuse experience. "I was assured that she would never take advantage of that tale, since she respected me. The next thing I knew, I was being blackballed, and my abuser was being interviewed on her show. That wasn't just betrayal. That was retaliation," Wendy added, her words leaving the jurors in disbelief. "They grinned with him. Photographs were taken. As the rest of us were beaten for speaking up, they stood by Diddy's side. And I know why. Because they needed him for deals, for reach, for silence." She proceeded to disclose an email that had been inadvertently given to her from a public relations agency that handled crisis communication for both Perry's studio and a Bad Boy-affiliated brand. The subject line read, "Managing Optics, Wendy, Puff, Tyler." Wendy clarified that although the message didn't say much, it was sufficient for her. Wendy gazed forward. The tension in the courtroom was rising with each word Wendy spoke. These stars aren't individual entities, but rather part of a larger system that thrives on secrecy and eliminates anybody who dared to reveal their true nature. Prosecutors then cited Wendy's subsequent withdrawal of a large file folder as a turning point. "This," she continued, touching the cover, "is a compilation of non-disclosure agreement email threads and internal memos that were never meant to be made public." She elaborated that she had acquired them not via hacking but via long-gone acquaintances in the sector. They were weary of seeing women vanish, weary of seeing facts twisted into rumors. After obtaining an NDA from 2007, Wendy started reading it. The wording was foreboding, and the name had been redacted. Subject promises not to reveal anything about any private meetings, conversations, or recordings involving Sean Combs, his associates, or visitors. Penalties, including monetary fines and possible public reprisal, may ensue from a breach of this agreement. Then she pounded the paper, an act of public vengeance. Following that, she perused an internal communication from a high-end hotel chain. Extra linens, candles, and discretionary measures have been made available in the presidential suite per your request. Before guests are allowed admission, Mr. Combs's aide will come to set up. "Remember that email's date?" asked Wendy. "Cassie remained in Diddy's employ in 2015. This was only a celebrity bash. Are you kidding me?" "No," she told herself. Here was a framework. The whole thing was orchestrated, paid for, arranged, and then cleaned up afterward. She exposed proof of payments made to publicists, talent managers, and even bloggers, all in an effort to control the storyline. An email purportedly directed a reporter to focus on Diddy's charitable efforts rather than the current claims. Next, the prosecution shared a photo with the jury, which showed Diddy, Tyler Perry, and a media consultant renowned for her crisis sweep services posing together at a gala in 2019. Wendy testified that she, too, had been offered a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, and that they wanted to shut me up, in reference to the practice of paying women to be silent while others were punished severely for refusing to sign. If I could just change the subjects I was reporting on, they offered me a syndicated TV deal. The jurors remained mute as Wendy drew to a close, saying, "The silence they bought cost others their freedom, their peace, their truth." She was the one who had to pay the price for saying no. Little by little, the NDAs are starting to come undone. Despite the emotional weight of her testimony, Wendy Williams remained composed throughout. For 20 years, she had warned the world, but no one had listened. "When you see Diddy on trial, you see something much bigger," she stated with a composed and controlled voice. "This isn't just about what he did. It's about who let him do it," she said, gesturing toward the defense table. "You see one man, but behind him is a legacy of silence, a tower built on fear, on non-disclosure agreements, on power struggles, on party invites, and on billion-dollar handshakes." Then she addressed the jury directly. She informed the court that although Diddy was the one facing charges, Jay-Z, Perry, Oprah, the labels, and the managers had all sat silently for years, with some even witnessing the abuse unfolding before their eyes. His hand was shaken by them. Those were his paychecks. Additionally, they ensured that anyone who dared to inquire was promptly expelled. At the end of her testimony, Wendy returned to the powerful, unrestrained voice that had made her radio program renowned. "My character was characterized as bitter. People said I was insane. I was correct, though. She turned to Diddy, who had maintained a relatively expressionless demeanor during her testimony, and said, "I would rather be right in hell than be silent in heaven. You believed I had departed. Your belief in your own strength was misguided. But now you sit where the truth finally caught up to you, and I hope it's loud." According to Wendy, who turned back to face the gallery, this trial is not the end. It's the beginning of people finally naming names, of the walls cracking, and of the whole tower one day falling down. With that, she walked out.